Step back in time and join us on an incredible journey to the ancient city of Kerma, where history, culture, and civilization collide in a fascinating display of African heritage. The ancient city of Kerma is said to have been established around 2500 BCE and was one of the earliest urban centers in Nubia, which is a region located in present-day Sudan. Stick with the video to learn about this lesser-known African empire, her relationship with ancient Egypt, how Egyptians adopted their Nubian gods, and significant chronological moments in Nubia, though most of her story is told through the lens of ancient Egypt, since not much study on the area has been done, and the language of Kerma could not be translated, unlike Egyptian hieroglyphics, which were deciphered through the help of the Rosetta Stone. It was a prosperous city and was the capital of the Kerma Kingdom, which was one of the largest and most powerful Nubian states in ancient times and lasted from around 2500 BCE to 1500 BCE. At the height of its power, the Kingdom of Kerma was a wealthy and sophisticated civilization that rivaled the neighboring state of Kemet, otherwise known as Egypt, in terms of its political and military power, and controlled a significant portion of the Nile River Valley, stretching from the first to the fourth cataracts. This means that its domain was as extensive as ancient Egypt and allowed it to become an agricultural powerhouse with rich and fertile land that supported a large population. Kerma has always been thought to have been the first Nubian kingdom, but from new archaeological evidence, scholars have identified the first Nubian civilization that emerged about 3800 BC and lasted until 3100 BC, and its settlements were between Aswan and the Second Nile Cataract. A most significant discovery from this period, made by Chicago's Oriental Institute, was a stone incense burner that was excavated at the site of Kustul, which was the capital of the Nubian kingdom called Taseti, meaning the land of the bow. Engraved on the side of the burner are a seated ruler, a palace portal, and a crown and falcon, motifs that were to become symbols of Egyptian pharaohs. The name Kerma is believed to be of Nubian origin, but from early records, the people of Kemet, otherwise known as the ancient Egyptians, referred to the Nubian people in their kingdom as Kush in their texts and inscriptions, which included the Annals of Thutmose III, the Karnak temple inscriptions, and the Amarna letters, among others. These texts provide valuable information about the relationship between the ancient Egyptians and the Nubians and reveal that the Egyptians saw the Nubians as a separate culture with their own history, traditions, and political organization. The use of the name Kush by the ancient Egyptians also reflects the political and cultural boundaries that existed between the two civilizations and provide a glimpse into the complex dynamics of intercultural relations in ancient times. During the years of its existence, the Kingdom of Kerma underwent a series of transformations, including periods of expansion, decline, and resurgence, as well as significant cultural and technological developments. Today, the ruins of this ancient city and its extensive network of settlements and monuments are popular tourist destinations and valuable sources of information about the history and culture of Nubia. The language of the people of Kerma is not well known, however, it is believed that the people of the kingdom spoke a Nubian language, which was part of the larger Nilo-Saharan language family. There is evidence that the ancient Egyptians used interpreters to communicate with the Nubians, and it is also believed that the Kerma language was written using a native script that has not yet been fully deciphered, as well as the Egyptian hieroglyphic script. The language was likely influenced by the languages of other neighboring African groups, together with the neighboring ancient Egyptian language. However, much of what is known about the language of ancient Kerma is speculative, and more research is needed to gain a deeper understanding of this important aspect of Nubian culture. The cultural traditions of the ancient Nubians of Kerma were different from those of the ancient Egyptians, as they had their own unique religious beliefs, political systems, and artistic styles. They were also known for their independent development of techniques for working with faience, which was a key feature of their material culture. Despite the heavy Egyptian influence, the Nubians maintained a distinct cultural identity throughout their history, and their differences from the Egyptians can be seen in their architecture, art, and burial practices. Kerma's distinctive pottery was characterized by intricate geometric patterns and the use of a wide range of colors, including blue, red, and black, and the people were also known for their skill in working with metal, particularly in the production of bronze tools and weapons. An example of Nubian pottery is this cup that has features characteristic of the African-influenced group known as polished and sized ware. A key aspect of Kerma culture was its religious beliefs and practices, which were influenced by both Nubian and Egyptian traditions. The Kingdom of Kerma was home to a number of significant religious sites, including the famous Defufa complex, which served as the center of religious and political power in the kingdom. Another key characteristic of Kerma was its highly centralized political structure, which allowed Kerma to maintain a high degree of control over its territory and gave it a level of stability and security. The settlement terms of the kingdom were divided into several periods, which included early Kerma, middle Kerma, classic Kerma, and recent Kerma, with each being characterized by different cultural, religious, and economic practices. The early Kerma period, which was also known as the Proto-Dynastic period, lasted from around 2500 BCE to 2200 BCE and was characterized by the development of the city as a political and cultural center. During this time, Kerma emerged as a powerful kingdom and established itself as a major player in the Nile region and was a hub of trade and cultural exchange between Nubia and Egypt, and saw the development of Nubian art and religious and political architecture, including the Defufa, which was a massive mud brick structure that served as a religious and political center for the city. During the early Kerma period, the city's royal burials became more elaborate, reflecting the growing wealth and power of the city's rulers, and the tombs were designed to showcase the status of the city's rulers and were filled with valuable goods and treasures. This period was also marked by the growth of the city's economy, which was based on agriculture, trade, and the production of crafts and textiles. The Middle Kerma period, which lasted from around 2200 BCE to 1750 BCE, was a time of continued growth and prosperity for the city of Kerma, and during this time, the city became one of the largest and most powerful political entities in Nubia and continued to play a significant role in the region's trade and cultural exchange with Egypt. The Classic Kerma, which lasted from around 1750 BC to 1500 BC, was the most prosperous phase as it absorbed the Sudanese kingdom of Sai and became a more populous empire. During this time the city grew immense power and stability and became the most powerful state in the Nile region, coinciding with the period when Egypt had been weakened by the invasion of the Hyksos, who were a group of invaders who came from West Asia. This period also saw the rise of the city's military power, and the city became involved in a series of wars and conflicts with its neighbors, including the Kingdom of Egypt. The recent Kerma period, which lasted from around 1500 BCE to 1075 BCE, was a time of decline for the city of Kerma, and during this time, the city faced significant challenges to its power and stability, and the city's political and economic structures underwent significant changes. The recent Kerma period came to an end with the fall of the city to the Kingdom of Egypt, which had conquered Nubia and incorporated it into its empire. The relationship between Kerma and the people of ancient Egypt was always defined by a delicate balance of cooperation and competition. At times, the two states were allies and engaged in trade and cultural exchange, while at other times they were in conflict, with the Kingdom of Kerma resisting Egyptian expansion into Nubia. These two kingdoms shared a close relationship and had significant cultural and economic interactions. Evidence suggests that during the Old Kingdom period, there were contacts between ancient Egypt and early Nubia, and early Nubian regional rulers were friendly to the Egyptian pharaohs, and the epigraphic evidence from the site of Aniba, in Nubia, support this. It is also thought that intermarriage between the two communities wasn't rare. However, as time passed, the relationship between the two regions became more complex, and eventually, Nubia became a powerful kingdom in its own right, challenging the power of Egypt, leading to tensions and conflict between the two kingdoms. Records indicate that there was conflict between the two regions, with the Egyptians sometimes pushing south into Nubia and the Nubians pushing north into Egypt. And during the New Kingdom period, the Egyptians established military control over Lower Nubia, building fortresses and temples along the Nile River to secure their southern border. This shows that the Egyptians took Nubian military power seriously and took steps to protect themselves from potential invasions. The execration texts that date to the reign of Pharaoh Senusret III of the 12th Egyptian dynasty, which was around the late 19th century BCE, listed individuals and political entities considered to be enemies of Egypt. The fact that a ruler of Kush was listed among the enemies in these execration texts suggests the existence of a powerful political entity in Upper Nubia, which was centered around the city of Kerma. Nubian kings such as Segersenti were mentioned in execration texts, as well as over 200 other Nubian kings, which suggest that the ancient Egyptians were aware of the power and organization of the Nubian kingdom, and that Kerma was a significant political force in the region and controlled a significant portion of the Nile Valley and Nubia during the Middle Kingdom period in Egypt. Trade between these two kingdoms has been well documented and is even evidenced by items belonging to the other kingdom, which were found in each other's ownership. Archaeologists have discovered numerous artifacts from the kingdom of Kerma in ancient Egypt and vice versa, including pottery, jewelry, and other decorative items. These finds indicate trade and cultural exchange between the two civilizations, with some of the most notable discoveries including Nubian-style pottery found at Egyptian sites, as well as Egyptian-style jewelry found at Kerma sites. The ancient Egyptians adopted several cultural elements from the Nubians, including some religious beliefs and practices. The artistic styles and techniques that the Egyptians adopted from the Kerma culture have not been thoroughly studied. However, there is evidence of cultural exchange and influence between the two. The ancient Egyptians worshipped a complex pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own unique characteristics and attributes. The origin of the Egyptian god Bes, who was a popular deity in ancient Egypt, is closely tied to the neighboring Nubian civilization. Bes was revered as the god of childbirth, fertility, and music, and was depicted as a short, plump, and fierce-looking figure with a lion or panther skin and playing a musical instrument, such as the sistrum or tambourine. The Nubian origin of Bes is indicated by his close association with Nubian religious beliefs and practices. For example, Bes was worshipped as a protective deity in Nubia, where he was believed to provide safety and security to families, especially during childbirth. This religious significance was later adopted by the Egyptians, who integrated Bes into their pantheon as a god of fertility and childbirth. This Nubian origin of the god Bes is a testament to the close cultural, religious, and artistic exchange between Nubia and Egypt and underscores the rich and varied African influences on ancient Egyptian civilization. As an established kingdom, Kerma is known to have developed techniques to work with materials independently from Egypt, and it became a symbol of their culture and wealth. Some of the most notable Kerma artifacts include blue faience objects, which are a type of glazed ceramic material that was used to create a variety of objects such as figurines, amulets, and jewelry. The people of Kerma were renowned for their ability to create intricate and beautiful objects in this medium, and its extensive use in their art and architecture has led to the city's recognition as an important center of ceramic production in ancient Nubia, but because most of the surviving examples come from graves that were plundered in antiquity, only an incomplete selection of personal embellishments survives. Funerary objects were also discovered in Kerma, since was an important center of burial and funeral practices. Temples and architectural remains have been found in the city and signify that Kerma was a capital and a religious center. The exterior of the temples featured bright blue glazed tiles, inlays, and moldings, but with the absence of written records, scholars can only speculate about the nature of the religious practices that took place therein. In addition to these, other important structures at Kerma include a large palace, several smaller temples, and several residential neighborhoods, as well as an extensive cemetery that contains a number of large, elaborate royal tombs, as well as smaller, more modest burials for the city's common citizens. During excavations, Egyptologists tried to rationalize the existing assertion that Egypt had clearly achieved a great civilization that their neighbors had not, which led to the Egyptologists defying logic and perpetuating pseudo-scientific convictions. However, these diverse artifacts from Kerma are a rich and diverse record of life in ancient Nubia and provide a window into the history, culture, and beliefs of this fascinating civilization, despite being studied lesser than Egypt. The cemetery of Kerma was an important center for burials and funerary practices in the ancient Nubian kingdom and was associated with the royal palace complex of Kerma and was the final resting place for the kingdom's royalty, elites, and other members of the court. One of the most notable features of the Kerma cemetery was the use of circular, beehive-shaped tumuli as tombs for the Nubian royalty. These tumuli were constructed from mud bricks and were often several meters in height. They were covered in a layer of white gypsum to create a smooth dome-like shape and were decorated with patterns and images of religious and cultural significance. In addition to the tumuli, the Kerma cemetery also contained several underground tombs, including the so-called Great Tumulus, which was one of the largest and most impressive tombs in the ancient world. Kerma's rulers were buried along with the remains of animals and humans, sacrificed to accompany the rulers to the afterlife. The dead lay on leather mats or wooden beds decorated with precious materials like gold and ivory, and burial offerings included sculptures, food, beverages, weapons, jewelry, mirrors, beaded leather clothing, and exquisitely made pottery. The elite members of society buried their dead on elaborately decorated wooden beds with feet in the shape of cow hooves and a footboard decorated with ivory inlays. The footboard bears images of both real and mythical creatures. The people of Kerma buried their dead lying curled up on their sides, with their heads on wooden headrests, which are still used in African regions today. During Kerma's peak, they performed a very successful military expedition that crushed Egypt, and is evidenced by discoveries made in 2003 at the governor of El Kab's tomb, which is located near Thebes, and show that Kerma invaded deep into Egypt between 1575 and 1550 BC. It is believed that this was one of Egypt's most humiliating defeats, which later pharaohs erased from the official historic records. After this resounding defeat, the new kingdom of Egypt attacked Kerma in a series of invasions, and in the early 18th dynasty, the Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose I, who ruled between 1520 to 1492 BC, launched a series of military campaigns against the Nubian kingdom and destroyed a lot of the cities. The kingdom of Kerma ceased to exist as an independent state in around 1504 BC, and its population was enslaved and others were forced to flee. Nubia was officially absorbed into the new kingdom of Egypt, but rebellions continued for centuries until 1300 BC. Nubia nevertheless became a key province of the Egyptian New Kingdom economically, politically, and religiously. In fact, major pharaonic ceremonies were held at Jebel Barkal in Nubia. Under this new rule as an Egyptian colony, Kerma was governed by an Egyptian viceroy who was appointed by the pharaoh from the 16th century BC, and the Egyptian administration brought with it many of the cultural and religious practices of Egypt, and Egyptian-style temples and other structures were built in Nubian cities and towns. Resistance to Egyptian rule by the neighboring Kush is evidenced in the writings of Ahmes, the son of Abanes-Tum, who was an Egyptian warrior who served under the pharaohs Ahmes I, Amenhotep I, and Thutmose I. It states that at the end of the Second Intermediate Period, which was around the mid-16th century BC, Egypt faced twin existential threats, which were the Hyksos in the north and the Kushites in the south. In Ahmes's writings, the Kushites are described as archers in a statement that said, "Now after His Majesty had slain the Bedouin of Asia, he sailed upstream to Upper Nubia to destroy the Nubian bowmen." The tomb writings contain two other references to the Nubian bowmen of Kush, but by 1200 BC, Egyptian involvement in the Dongola Reach was non-existent. Despite Egyptian rule, Nubian culture and traditions continued to thrive, which implies that the Egyptians allowed the Nubians to continue with their culture, and Nubian merchants and traders played a significant role in the region's trade and commerce. With the disintegration of the new Egyptian kingdom at around 1070 BC, Kush became an independent kingdom centered at Napata in modern northern Sudan. This kingdom of Kush emerged approximately 500 years after the end of the kingdom of Kerma and regained the region's independence from Egypt. Stay tuned as we bring you the great history of this new and more advanced Nubian kingdom that saw its pharaohs conquer Egypt to become the rulers of Egypt's 25th dynasty and even build the lesser-known Meroitic pyramids, though no one knows when they were built for sure, and how they developed a sophisticated understanding of technology, medicine, and mathematics.